Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Airshow Lounge podcast. My name is Dan, and joining me are...
Jack.
Evan.
Pringle.
Okay, so this is a new podcast that a load of us have just had to start, as we are all what I'd class as aircraft nerds, and we want to talk about air shows coming up, everything that's to do with aviation, whether that is in the UK or further abroad, as we'll get into in later episodes. And yeah, it's going to be sort of a nice, fun podcast for just people to listen to whenever, sort of going on with things and everything. So, we want to start off straight away. The big announcement, the big air show of the year is RIAT, and them announcing the first participant all the way in December, which hasn't been since 2018. It's the Canadian F-18, which is a really cool catch for, I think, the show. I don't know what anyone else's opinions are on this, but I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, the livery that they released for it looks really good for the top and the bottom. So if they're going to be doing some rolls in the display, you'll definitely get great pictures.
Exactly. I mean, well, it's the first, I think, if I remember correctly, it's the first full body, like full bottom and top since 2006 or something, like really early. Because when we had the one in 2018 at RIAT, it was just topside. So it's going to be full, it's going to be amazing, it's going to be great. And if anyone, I don't know, it might go through the Mac loop like it did last time.
Oh, that'd be splendid.
What else? Go on, Andy, you got any... Well, go on, Jack.
I think what's nice as well is that you've got all these like different nationality or different countries, that are now sort of getting to their big milestones. Like you've had the Royal Air Force get to 100, you've had the Italians get to 100 this year, and now obviously the Canadians are. And it's nice that they're premiering their aircraft at RIAT as well.
Well, they've taken it out of what would have been, was it Cold Lake Air Show, which is a massive air show in Canada, I think, and they're bringing it to RIAT of all shows to come and display it here. And I know a load of people on the socials have been complaining that they're not taking it, and I think that shows the big push that RIAT has. I mean, hopefully for years to come we'll be celebrating 100 years of a lot of different air forces, and RIAT will be the central stage in Europe for those celebrations.
Yeah, I think it's nice to split it up as well, with everybody mostly taking the F-35 is going to be the main airframe for most countries now for the next couple of decades. So it is a nice break, like you said, for the loop. It's not often you get an F-18 over here unless there's a big exercise going on, and even then, catching them isn't guaranteed when they do night ops. And they're just bog standard. This is a full Canadian livery, so it'll be quite interesting to see it. And it's a flying display as well, not just a static.
Well, yeah, that's the brilliant part. And as you mentioned, the F-35, this might be, bearing in mind, I think Canada start taking the first delivery of F-35s in 2026. So this might be the last time we ever see the F-18 demo in Europe. So it could be the last time we see it, which could be, we stop thinking about that. There's, in a couple of RIAT's time, we're going to have probably no more F-16s, no more F-18s. It's just going to be F-35s. And, as you get to know a lot of us on this podcast, you'll get to know that Jack doesn't necessarily like the F-35 too much. But, it is going to be a common theme. And it's surprising so far that we actually haven't had many F-35s. I think last year was the first year we had 5 on static. So they're starting to ramp up numbers. And with the Belgians taking their first delivery soon, it'll be, that'll be it.
On that, I think the Belgians took their first one about 2 hours ago.
Oh, okay, so it's like now, okay. I don't know how many years we've got left of their F-16 demo. It must be, 2 or 3 now? Can't be long.
No, not at all. But what going back to what we've currently got, obviously we're very lucky that, the F-16's 50 next year. But also, you've got, with the F-18, there is so many good F-18 demo teams, like the Swiss, the Finns, the Spanish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do Finland have them? I can't remember.
It was really
F-18s. Yeah.
But like each display that you watch, you think it's going to be the same thing, but it's not, and it just shows you how versatile each Air Force is using these airframes.
I think ever since getting rid of those angle attack limits and properly letting them just fly the aircraft as much as as they want. I mean, especially I think it was the first time I saw the Finnish display in 2019, and it was compared to the Swiss one, and I was just in absolute awe of the display that they were doing with it because it was insane. I mean, some of the things you could do with the F-18, like make sometimes the F-35 or the F-16 look like a second gen fighter, and it's just insane. I think we're so lucky in Europe to have a load of these demos because again, it won't be long. I think the only hope is that it's like with the Spanish with their Harriers, they're the only ones that are not going to upgrade to F-35s anytime soon. So there'll only be a few nations that will not have the same aircraft.
Yeah, because with the Swiss and their F-18 demos, I think they've got 3 liveries that they use. But as they get more F-35 orders and coming in, it will probably be a few years until there won't be a Swiss F-18 anymore doing demos and displays. It'll be the 35.
It's going to be an interesting scene in a couple of years and how everything goes, and hopefully that a few air forces take up different aircraft. I mean, Poland are purchasing different ones, so hopefully they get a good range of stuff, and we still do have a good range of aircraft, and eventually everyone's going to be complaining like the F-16 is now. Oh, it's just a F-16 festival. It's an F-35 festival, but it's. We don't get air shows like this now in the UK, with air shows going down, and be stopping, and it's like it's amazing to have this sort of level of display in the UK, especially as the biggest military air show in the world, as they so claim. That we have it here, basically on our doorstep. It's a couple of hours drive for some of us, maybe 4 or 5 for others, but we have the biggest air show in Europe on our doorstep, and we get all these nations that don't have to bring things. They'll pay for it themselves, so it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Speaking also of React and the Canadian stuff, I just want to bring your attention to a comment made by Ron Walker, who's the Brigadier General in the Canadian Air Force. He said that they plan on, and this is quoted, they plan on bringing a diverse array of assets and culture to the air show this year, which is going to be interesting, since they kind of doesn't have necessarily a lot of different items in their inventory. But what we thinking? What do we think we're going to get that wise? I mean, for me straight away, I'm thinking anything big, so anything cargo or anything sort of maybe refueling or anything like that.
They bring their A320.
Well,
Yes.
with it's the 100th anniversary of ARCAF, this RIAT is also its 75th anniversary in NATO.
Yes, there's a lot of themes this year that are
Yeah,
all
Canada have AWACS.
And Canada was one of the 12 founding members of NATO, so obviously they've
True.
got the A310s.
They're gonna have, obviously, with the F-18 demo coming over, you're gonna have a tanker of some sort because it's got to drag them over.
Yeah.
So, but do they still fly? Is it the P3 Orions?
I think so. I think Canada still have them.
Because that would be a nice surprise, because they're so uncommon now.
Yeah.
I think, looking at special mission stuff, they've got the P3s. They still have 15 of them apparently. You've got a lot of Hercs, you've got C-17s, you've got their A310s. Obviously, if we can get that livery from, was it 2022 that had that really nice Canada retro livery on it, that would be a cool pull. I think, could you maybe stick a helicopter, maybe like a Huey or something, in the back of a C-17 and bring it over? Is that something that they could do? And I guess the other question is, we know we're going to have a display jet. We know we're going to have a spare flying jet with that. Are they going to bring a third or a fourth over for static? That's going to be an interesting one. Are they
Did
gonna?
Canada used to have Sea Kings because they could bring one of them over, surely in the back of something?
Well,
They
yeah,
might have done.
I was going to say alongside fixed wing, they've got a lot of rotary. They've got Griffins,
They do.
they've got Chinooks.
Yeah.
You know,
One thing that would be amazing that it won't happen, I can't see it happening, was if they were to bring the snowbirds over.
I think the snowboards are booked up at Cold Lake for the
But like,
weekend.
even if they
Yeah.
bring one of those training aircraft to the
Yeah.
UK, just as something different, I mean, it's possible, but you just never know.
I mean, it'd be an amazing catch if they bring anything over. I think it's going to be interesting to see in the lead up to Riyadh what we get from them. I think they said that for Canadian stuff, it will be in the springtime, so we probably won't find out now till April, May. But if we get some cool things, I think now it's been the Italian 100 centenary was they've left something, a massive hole to fill. If we now do any more centenaries, they've got to be getting in lots of different classic aircraft from over Europe that maybe the Canadians have flown before or stuff like that. I don't know. Has the Canadian ever flown a Vampire before? If so, could you bring over the Norwegian Vampire from Norway? What else is there in Europe that they could, potentially catch that they could bring over and put in that static display? Because what it sounds like is they're going to do exactly what they did with the Italians this year and have just a nice dedicated section to Canada, which is going to be cool. It's going to be cool because it's not something we don't see a lot of Canadian stuff in Europe in any air show, really.
No, I totally agree. I do like where this could lead, especially when the bar's been set so high.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think setting the bar so high is a great segue over to the Midlands Air Festival and what they have announced so far already, which I, even just setting up for this first episode of the podcast, I didn't realise that they'd announced some of the stuff that they had. And it might be a purchase that's been made very shortly for me to get a ticket to go to there.
Yeah.
They announced just this last week that the F-86 Sabre is going to be doing a flying display on both the Saturday and the Sunday of the show, which for the Sunday now makes it two classic jets of the Saab 35 Draken and the F-86 Sabre already. And they teased in the post that there is more jets to come. What genuinely could they bring? Because this was a tiny show is this the third or fourth year running now? And they're getting some catches that you'd only probably expect the likes of Cosford or Rhea. And there's some brilliant catches, especially for an inland display, two classic jets. I mean, obviously the Saab 35 can only get better from last year, from the air traffic control mess that happened with that. But what can happen? I mean, I don't know what anyone else's opinion was on this. I think it could be a brilliant show.
I feel like as they're already bringing over the Draken, it's not too kind of absurd to believe that they might bring over like the Lanson or the Tunnan with them as well. But yeah, I mean, the Typhoon will be there because I'm pretty sure there was a Foon last time.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully the Swedish will bring over some more of their older than the Draken jets.
I just think it's going to be for a local little display it's not a big capacity crowd. I don't know what capacity crowd they have, but it's not big. And
the thing is, like, at the minute, so Midlands is kind of becoming the Bournemouth of what is the coastal show to go to.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, like, the Midlands Air Show has now, it kind of sits at the right time. It's like the first proper air show weekend in the UK. And they just seem to draw, I don't know what it is, they just seem to draw something in. And it's really good for the local community. And it's good to see that an inland air show is becoming so popular away from Riyadh.
I think, yeah, well, currently they've announced 6 participants. So, as aforementioned, we've got the Saab 35 Draken, the F-86 Sabre. They've got a display from an SF-260. They have Team Raven already there. Extra 300S, which was, I think, previously part of the was it Little and Small demo team, the one that had the little RT one and then the full blown extra 300, and they've got the gyro there already. 6 participants already in December for a June show. Of quite remarkable. I mean, Cosford's meant to be, coming back this year, and with what Midlands Air Festival have announced so far, they've got one hell of a
competition
to live up to. I'm about to say, yeah, it's Cosford normally you'd see that as the second biggest air show in the UK now. Maybe inland shows, maybe some of the coastal shows would do it, but I tell you what, Midlands Air Festival are giving them a run for their money this year. And it'll be interesting to see what Cosford can bring. Bear in mind, it's the RAF's premier air show.
I mean, it's the first time that you get most of the RAF component as well together. Obviously, you get the Typhoon, you get the Reds. I don't know if the Chinook display are around at that point because they kind of come in at the middle of the season, just before Riat. But it kind of gives you a really good taste as to how that airshow season's gonna go.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think with what Midlands is looking up to be, I think I only plan to go to 4 different air shows this year. I think a 5th one might have to add itself to the list, just for that Sunday show, just to see 2 classic jets back in the sky, because we don't see them regularly now in the UK. And I think with what they've teased and potentially having more jets, I mean, it could be a genuinely brilliant show this year. And it could be one that you look back at and go, what a brilliant year that was for the Midlands Air Festival.
The thing is as well, if you look at classic jets, the F-86, the Viggen, the Draken, and all of those sort of aircraft, you never know how long they've got left, even a vintage aircraft, because one day the funding might just stop, or the support for it just runs out, and all of a sudden this iconic jet will just become another museum piece. So what's good is that so many new spotters, new people to air shows, and also the older are really appreciative of how rare this is.
Yeah. I think it's something for even the organisers of Riat and Cosford to look at and go, how are they getting these? What can we do to get these? Because, there isn't much time left. And I know it costs a lot of money because I think Riat do pay towards when the Swedish Historical Flight come over like they did in 2022. I think we've got to be, having these at least one British show every year to have them while they are here. And, it doesn't look like anyone's bringing, any of the old... it'd be nice if someone got a Jaguar running or a Tornado running, but it isn't like anyone's even in the, idea of doing that. So we aren't too far away from having no classic jet displays.
You look at XH558, so the Vulcan. It was when did it retire? 2015, and now it's barely. It's barely got somewhere to live. I mean, and this is 8 years. And in 8 years, it's gone from having a loving home to basically becoming a runt.
Yeah, it is. It's currently sat on Doncaster tarmac, out in the open, in the elements. They engine run it maybe a couple of times a year.
If they're lucky.
Yeah. And that's about it. It has gone from a beautiful aircraft to being stuck on the ground. And I think hopefully they will be able to get a permanent home with the uncertainty of whether or not Doncaster is going to open again. Can they build it a permanent home there? Can they transport it somewhere else? I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting what they can do with that. And I think,
Yeah, it's really sad, for something that was made to use was used to make. It was made for use of one thing, and it ended up doing something completely different.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think, well, you are correct. It was made to be a nuclear strategic bomb, and it ended up being the centerpiece of any airshow, and an inspiring centerpiece of any airshow. I mean,
But also, what it did down to the Falklands. What other
Yeah.
aircraft do you know that would fly all that way to the Falklands, basically on a suicide mission?
I mean, there's you think of what, maybe two US ones. That's it.
Yep.
That's about it. Maybe a B2 and a B-52, but that's it. And the Vulcan did it easily with millions of tankers, but
Yeah.
and it went and did its mission, and I think for it to be sat there on the tarmac currently, it's a sad sight. But hopefully they find a home for it. Hopefully, even if it's like, I don't know, take it to a museum, take it down to Duxford. I don't know, chuck it on the back of a lorry and take it somewhere, because at the moment it's not. It needs to go somewhere, even if it's just for storage.
I'm sure Duxer would be happy to take the Vulcan if they haven't already asked, as that would definitely get a ton more people going to their air shows than there already are. Because I've been
Imagine they had two Vulcans on site.
and one of them's flying, because I've been to 2 Duxford air shows this year, and I've been going since like 2010, and even that I've never seen the Vulcan fly, so that would be awesome to have there, as it's only an hour away from me.
Yeah, I think if they somehow could get it flying again, I mean, I highly doubt it.
It's out of time. It's out of hours.
Yeah.
I'd love someone to do it. I think you've got to have so much money. You've got to have so much money. You've got to know the right people. You've got to get the people that are willing to work hours upon hours fixing components. It almost would need for a whole new aircraft to be built from scratch, 0 hours,
Yeah.
using all the blueprints and everything to take it.
Its only kind of hope now is some really super duper rich aviation enthusiast or the Air Force to save it.
Yeah.
But apart from those 2 options, it's not really got much else going for it.
No, it's not. It's
One, I'm
Jumping
going to
back
give you
to it,
one fun fact on the Vulcan.
Mhm.
So you know XH558.
Uh-huh.
It did 55 years of service, and it did 8 display seasons. So 558.
yeah.
Jesus. That's one heck of a career for one plane.
Go on, Evan. I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I was going back to what was it about appreciating some of these older jets and not knowing how long they've got left. That also drags you into the warbirds. You know, you got piston aircraft that are coming up on 18, 90 years old, maybe a bit younger than that, but a lot of them now are privately maintained. And if they're not getting the love because everybody wants to see just these fast jets, then they're quickly going to stop appearing as well.
Yeah, I think. Well, you look at the sort of the Ducks for Battle of Britain Air Show. They always have the big wing in it every year, and slowly the numbers of aircraft in that are slowly decreasing because of airframe hours just not being able to be maintained enough to carry on, or the lack of funding going. And I think this year, they had 16. I think the year previous was 21. So you're dropping 5 aircraft. If that carries on, you're going to have, in a
Have a real problem.
You're not going to have many, are you? And the saving grace is we do have the Battle of Britain Memorial flight that is funded, lot. It's kept at Coningsby. It's the only thing that we'll have warbirds-wise left. And, I mean, hopefully this is just all, the cost of living and everything doesn't have too much of an effect, and we can have this forever, and these warbirds can go on for ages. But I think it's probably going to be a time where we start seeing replicas being built.
Like with the ME-262.
Exactly, yeah. And having aircraft that are easily maintainable because I mean you've got to think those Rolls-Royce engines are going to be a hell of expensive to maintain. The hours you put on them every year with the airshow stuff as well.
I mean,
Yeah.
with the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, it's like obviously you've got the Hurricane, Spitfire, and the Lanc that are often up, but they've also got a C-47 sitting there, DC-3, which is plagued with issues. I think is it this year? Last year they blew an engine.
Yeah.
And they've been able to get it going. But then that takes you back to what the Canadians could bring over. I think the Canadians have got an airworthy C-47.
I mean, yeah, hopefully. I mean, well, what's the Lancaster that does taxi runs and you can do taxi rides in it?
Is that just Jane?
Because there was always, I think it is. I think there was always talk of them trying to get that airworthy again, which would be insane if we had two in the UK airworthy. And whether or not that would then suffice to having, Canada bring over their Lancaster and have three in the UK all together. I mean, that would be insane.
Yeah, I just checked Google and I'm 99% sure that Canada do have a flying C-47. So what would be cool if Canada bring over their Dakota and Lancaster, and there can be a 2 Lancaster and 2 Dakota display. With one from Duxford.
Yeah, I think it nicely sort of leads on to, is it 80 years now since D-Day?
I think it was 80th anniversary this year, was it?
It's 80th this year coming.
Yeah.
This year coming.
Yeah, this year coming.
I haven't been kept up too much with it, but I'm pretty sure that they'll bring a load of the Sky Trains and stuff over from the US again, like they did.
D-Day 75.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get a load of that stuff across for maybe a Duxford air show cool.
Just in that, we're lucky with the RAF's airworthy Lancaster Papa Alpha 474. That never seen any action in World War II, and I don't think there are any left. Well, it's one of 2 airworthy, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it. Out of 7,000 odd that were built, there's 2 left. And they're just going to get more expensive to maintain every year, to the point where it might just become a static on the back of a wagon or something, or just purely a Gate Guardian somewhere else.
I'd like to hope it never comes to that. And I'd like to hope with RAF money funding behind it that it probably won't ever come to that. But you can see it does have its problems. I mean, every year something stops it from flying for a certain amount of weeks. Whether or not, like this year, it was the Rolls-Royce engines having a problem with some valve or something, and they had to ground all of them. I don't know. Well, I think we're heading to an interesting time for air shows, but one that could have good at the end of it. And I think we could have some really interesting displays. And I think that leads nicely into what we're looking forward to this year. I mean, well, my looking forward to before we even start this probably was going to be RIAT, but now I think Midlands Air Festival could be
outshining it.
I think it could be. I look forward to RIAT. I look forward to seeing what's there. I think it could be good. I don't know what are our predictions for it. What do we think is a realistic sort of thing to get? What do we think is going to happen with the F-16 theme? We haven't even talked about this F-16 theme. We can leave that till another episode. But what do we think? Could we have a static line of like 10, 20 F-16s? Like what are our predictions for this year for like just the air show scene in general?
I mean, a lineup of 16s wouldn't be impossible, because I feel like one from every Air Force that operates 16s, I'm sure it wouldn't be that big of an ask when it comes to it being for an air show to have at least one static from each Air Force.
I think it'd be interesting to see some of the ones that come over from like South America, that'd probably be a push. Like Chile and Venezuela, I think, have some.
Yeah, I think we're also... It's a turbulent time in the world, isn't it? Obviously, you've got deployments to Asia, the Middle East. So it's all depending on what's going on in the world. They sacrifice their assets, just so people can have a look for a couple of days, or are they going to be needed elsewhere to do what they're built for?
Yeah,
I think, I agree with what Evans just said because, you look at what's going on in Eastern Europe, and at the minute the go-to airframe is the F-16.
yeah.
Mm.
So how many are they going to want to spare for, a few days? Anything could happen.
I think it's got potential. It's got real potential. And I think from Belgian Air Force days this year, there is aircraft that we haven't had a real, like, Belgian Air Force days, they had two Portuguese F-16s. I don't remember the last time we had two Portuguese F-16s at Riyadh. It's got to be talking pre-COVID at least, and I don't even think I remember two in 2019, which was my first show. So there's potential for us to get, a good number over. I think realistically, you've got to look. The Netherlands sent two over this year. They're starting to get rid of theirs. Are they going to have them by the show? Maybe could they send two over? Portugal, I don't think they're getting rid of any soon. So I think they're the only ones that they could potentially send two over. Denmark, I think they're also swapping out their F-16s, aren't they, for F-35s? So are they gonna have maybe a couple they can send over? Belgium are the other big ones that I could think that they normally well support Riyadh. I mean, we normally get the flying spare, and then at least another two F-16s. So they could, and then I think it's then questionable from there. Could the Greece are going to send a flying and a flying spare? Could they spare any for static? Probably not. Poland, what can they do? Are Turkey going to come back? They haven't been for a while. What can the US bring over from Europe? Are they going to bring over two from each base? Two from Spain, two from Italy?
Yeah, I mean,
Are they just going to keep it at two? What are we looking at? Can we get any exotic ones? Romania has some really old F-16s. Could we get like a Moroccan F-16? It's only a hop over from North Africa. There is potential, real potential with this theme. I think it's just on expectations. I think any sort of decent line. I think if you get 8 F-16s in a row, I think that's a success for Riyadh. I think static. I think with the way that the world's going and stuff.
yeah,
I think if we get 8 on static and a couple in the flying, I think Riyadh have done well with stuff. I hope that in a couple of months' time we're talking about that they've already got 8 and there's all the other air arms still to announce, and that we are going to get some.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you've had a look at the invite list for Riyadh, there's some I think you can already wipe away. You've got the Iraqi Air Force, you've got the Israeli Air Force on there.
Yep.
So they've got some. Obviously, Israel's got their own slightly different variations of the F-16, which would have been interesting to see, but I think you could take that out of the equation.
Probably,
I think all of the American assets have been invited from reserves, Global Strike Command, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Marines. But even though it's the biggest air force in the world and the second biggest being the American Navy, they're always big participant in anything going off. So Eastern Europe and the Middle East, their airframes, they're the ones sending the aid. So we might be looking for, like the Uruguayan Air Force or the Thai Air Force to show up and replace what we would have seen from America.
Well, I think we shout probably to the Middle East, and I say the Middle East is in. Look at the Dubai Airshow that's just gone by. There was an F-16 display from was it the UAE?
Yeah.
Or there was definitely an F-16 Block 52 or Block 72 display from one of the countries there, and it was a good display. It was 6 minutes long, but it was a hella good display. We've got Jordan. They always bring the Jordanian Falcons. Could they? They're always a big supporter of the International Air Institute. They fly the F-16. Could they bring over a couple? Are they willing to do that? I think when we look at it, I think when we look at the outcome, I think we've got all the European things. I've got maybe Jordan, maybe the United Arab Emirates, maybe Oman, maybe, and then maybe the odd other one in there but that's about it. I don't think we're going to get something like Egypt or Indonesia or I don't know. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think you've got to tie it into the 75th anniversary of NATO as well. Obviously, Finland's the latest member. Is it Finland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, we said they've got the F-18. They've also got the C-295M, which is one of their electronic warfare aircraft. They've got the little PC-12. It's only a little prop, but as we said earlier, with variety, a lot of NATO is now F-35, or maybe they have, as the new stuff's getting more expensive to purchase and the old stuff's more expensive to maintain. They are focusing on one airframe. And if you look at the RAF, they've tried to keep, the different variations of aircraft down. We've retired the Herc, so now we've got, the main force Typhoon, 35, 400. Obviously, they've got P8s, but not so many. Yeah, and sharing the 35 with the Navy, there isn't much variety anymore, so we're just anything that we don't have is a bonus.
Well, we're getting wedge tails soon, so in a couple years we'll be able to add them to maybe a wedge tail fly past for air shows, but other than that, there's not really going to be much stuff for the RAF to add.
I mean, it's when can they sacrifice? When have they ever done P8? I'm not sure. My first air show was only this year.
Same.
It was either 2019 or 2022. There was a P8 fly past with the red arrows at React, but I can't remember what year it was.
I think it was last year.
22.
One of the two.
Yeah, 2022.
But I think we've got to end it. We've talked a little bit negatively. We've got to end it positively. I think while we have the air shows now, bearing in mind React might not be here for much longer. With funding and everything. So I think while we're here, we've got to think positively. We've got a good air show this year. We've got a great first participant that's a rare participant that we might never see again. I think we've got some genuinely decent themes of NATO 75, Canadian 100, and the F-16 50 years. We've got a great set of themes to build on. And over the last couple of years, we have, the tanker theme last year actually was a really good thing. And they provided on it, and we got some really cool things. So if we can keep the steam going, and I think React recently have been really open with everyone, and the way that they did the updates last year, having massive essay paragraphs on what they're talking to, who they're talking to, who they hope to have updates from next week. I think if they keep this openness with us, I think people stop getting upset when nothing US turns up. I think we can have a good show, and I think with the Midlands Air Festival, it's another positive. I think Cosford now hopefully get a kick up the backside to have a really good show this year. I hope this year we have a good set of air shows that we can all go and appreciate. I mean, Duxford are going to run the 80th anniversary of D-Day, so we've got some big milestones this year that could end up in having some really brilliant shows all across the UK. And hopefully, well, I say into Europe, there's not many shows in Europe this year, Radom's not going. We've got Belgian Air Force Days, which...
No air shows in Switzerland are happening because they take a break every 10 years.
Yeah.
There's only one, which is the Air Spirit 24.
Yeah, so I think the time for the UK to have good air shows is now when Europe hasn't got as many running because they have, Europe running 2-year cycles or like you said with the Swiss ones. I think we've got a good year this year to have a good set of displays. Hopefully we see something, see some cool stuff. I mean, with the NATO stuff, we could have some cool aircraft over. They've already teased the idea in emails, Riyadh, about having some cool, rare aircraft from NATO. Let's hope we do. I think we can definitely have a good air show, and we can end this podcast with the first episode on a nice high, and look positively to the near future.
I mean, I'd like to just push as well. Obviously, Riyadh and the Midlands are paid air shows. For my first, I've done 2 air shows this year, and both were free in a sense, as in you just park up and get to the beach, and that was real.
Yeah.
And Southport, you pay a parking fee, but they had, their blackjack, Chinooks, tutors. Yeah. Strike Masters, you have to pay big, and if they're if we're pulling in the crowds while Europe aren't putting on these shows, then perhaps the other air forces will look and be like, oh, it's worthwhile getting over there. So it could be a big year for the UK and air shows.
Yeah, I think Blackpool's also a free air show as well. So completely different, sort of.
Bournemouth is a free one, isn't it?
I think so. I think most coastal air shows are free, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I think it could be genuinely a good year. I think hopefully it's going to be a good year. Obviously on this podcast we'll keep talking about what is and isn't coming. We'll talk about it, because while there isn't many European air shows for us to talk about, there's obviously Belgian Air Force Days, which could be a big thing. See what they bring. I think we are going to be centrally focused UK this year, because so far there's some rarities, and I think that's going to set us in the right direction.
Yeah.
For the season. I think that's a nice little place to end this podcast on. Thank you everyone for listening to the first podcast. We hope to bring this all the way through into the airshow season, right to the end. Hopefully we can have, maybe when there's some lulls and stuff in early January where we might not have many announcements, we can hopefully get some cool podcasts going. We'll see if we can get any sort of special guests on if we can. And thank you for listening to hopefully what is the start of a really, really great year in air shows, and to a podcast that's going to be really fun to do. All right, thank you everyone.
Alrighty.
Bye bye.
See ya.
Yep.